Hi, I'm Brian Gruhn. I have the privilege of serving as pastor at First Congregational Church of Kittery at Kittery Point. And this is Beth. Beth is a member in discernment here and also our church council chair. Beth, hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for being with me. We are continuing to journey through our Lenten practice of observing obstacles that get in the way of relationship and then walking with Jesus and the disciples through the Gospel of John and finding practices that help all of us to overcome those obstacles. And today, our scripture comes from John chapter 13, verses 12 through 17, where we get this story. Jesus has just washed the feet of his disciples. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. And so for me, one of the things I see in this story is how status disrupts relationship. We all have this idea that like there's people who are up there, there's people who are down here, and it's really hard to be in relationship in that way. And Jesus is using the image. I won't show you my gross feet, but the image is foot washing. And this is where the whole idea of Maundy Thursday originally comes from. Maundy Thursday is actually we here at this church, we offer a service of tenebrae, which means shadow, but the actual meaning of Maundy Thursday is washing the feet. This is supposed to be that's supposed to be the day that Christians reenact this part of the story. We often don't do it because feet are gross, I think is a large reason why. But in this story, I see Jesus using service as a way of overcoming status, as a way of changing the relationship, the dynamic between him and his disciples. Now they're on an equal plane, and he teaches them to do likewise. I'm excited to have this short conversation with you because you have had an experience of actually going to a foot washing, and I have never really had that experience. Can you just share that story with us?
Sure. So as many of you know, I recently graduated from seminary at Boston University. And during my second semester, I took a course called Practicing Faith. And throughout the course, we did a number of spiritual practices. We did intoning, we did circles of trust. One of the ones that we did was foot washing, foot or hand washing, whichever you felt more comfortable doing. And let me read you a little bit about this experience. I had to write a reflection about it. And let me just set the scene for you. So we did kind of what Brian had just did. We read the scripture passage about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. And then we went into, there's a small chapel that we have. So we went out of the classroom and went into a small chapel. And we had someone who was able to play the piano. So she played some music on the piano. And we had some folks who, everybody had a role. And like we had some folks who were going and getting the water and bringing it into the room, and folks doing different parts of whatever was necessary for the foot washing and the hand washing to occur. And so it was kind of this beautiful space. And this is kind of what my internal process was like while this was happening. It says, many members of our class were deeply moved by this ritual of caring for one another, but my fear blocked me from feeling God's spiritual love during this faith practice. As another student washed my feet, all I could think about was, how am I supposed to react? Do my feet smell? Do my feet look gross and too ugly to touch? And as I washed a student's feet, similar thoughts ran through my head. Am I doing this right? How long am I supposed to do it for? Is she getting what she was expecting out of my foot washing? Instead of opening up my imagination to feel the love my foot washer had for me and the love that I showed to them, My imagination was preoccupied with conjuring up anxieties and worries, signs that I still had a long way to go towards embodying God's kingdom on earth. As we debriefed the powerful elements of this embodied practice in class, the areas I still needed to develop emerged. How to embody empathy and let ourselves go to imagine new ways of being. So I know Brian talked about status. An area that I really think about is surrendering and trusting, and humility.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It's hard even when you're all on that equal plane,
yeah.
like colleagues, students, friends.
Mhm.
Like it still requires such a tremendous level of vulnerability and trust. And yeah.
And leaning into the moment, trying to be present to the moment, and instead of worrying about these little like nagging, very human concerns like smell and am I doing this right? Or
Yeah. I mean, it makes me wonder what levels of fear and vulnerability we are often discounting or ignoring or like bulldozing over when we do any kind of work, service work together as a church. How often are we trying to do things just for the sake of getting them done, and we're ignoring all the parts where it's like, oh gosh, can I be myself in this space? Do we have a shared sense of the goal, or like when we stop doing what we're doing? How does this other person feel about, how's this going for them?
Yeah. So can I
fulfilling?
share a little bit about what some other folks said?
Oh, please. Yeah.
But I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't get that at all. So one of my fellow classmates, she was also a first year student, and she had recently moved to Boston from another town. And so she was away from her family for one of the first times. And she said that one of the things that she hadn't realized that she missed so much about being around her family was touch, people hugging her. And she was like, having someone, she did hand washing, having someone like just really care for her in this very physical way. I mean, she was moved to tears. She was like, it makes me realize how important touch and care is to me, and how I need to find ways to get that. And I was kind of blown away because I was like,
yeah,
here I was consumed by fears about whether my feet smelled.
That I think that's completely impactful, especially in this COVID world where none of us are hugging and touching and connecting physically as much as we would like to, even with friends. Yep. I think that's it. I think touch actually would be the practice, right? It's not just service. Like, this is an intimate form of service. This is about touch. This is about the healing power of human touch. Even on the smelliest, slimiest, grossest parts of ourselves that we don't, I mean, like, we have signs, there's signs in public that say no shoes, no service, right? Like, we're made to feel shame and we're made to feel embarrassed about our feet all the time. This story is a way of inviting in what is most intimate to you, and how are you going to allow God and your other beloved to touch, to heal you there,
to care for you.
That makes me uncomfortable just talking about it. So what do you think, like a year from now, like we might be able to experiment with some kind of foot washing ceremony here at our church?
Yeah, I think so. And it was really helpful to have the option of hand washing too, like hand or foot washing.
I like that.
So if people really aren't comfortable with feet, or but yeah, I totally think it's possible. I think that we can do it safely. I mean, people could wear gloves if they
sure.
Or but yeah, I do think that it's a really powerful way to build relationships.
Yeah.
Especially when you kind of debrief it afterward, or kind of have a conversation afterward about what it felt like,
That's awesome.
how you could feel the spirit. People talked about that too, that they could really feel the spirit in that room, the foot washing.
Well, and we are so blessed to have somebody among us to tell the story and to help us understand what we might be missing out on if we haven't experienced that before. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your vulnerability, and thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Awesome.
And hopefully I wouldn't be so worried about smell.
Yeah.
We did it a year from now.
We can spend
Hopefully I've learned something.
we can spend the year gathering like air fresheners or something. And bring them. Well, thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your journey on Holy Week, and we'll be seeing each other later this week.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having me.
much. Thanks for being here.